بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وحبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين الهداة المهديين. Brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to our first class, our first session on our class, Contemporary Islamic Laws, Contemporary Jurisprudence. Now, some of you who are listening or attending maybe have already taken some classes on Fiqh, which is basically Islamic laws and jurisprudence. But however, I will give a brief intro and explanation to or about the topic of al-fiqh, and then contemporary fiqh. What is contemporary fiqh and how is it different than just plain fiqh? And then inshallah we will begin with the different masail and issues of the class, inshallah. So the subject of this class, as you all know, is contemporary jurisprudence, contemporary fiqh or contemporary Islamic laws. And the subject of fiqh, which is one of the most important subjects that is taught in the houses, is basically the study of the Islamic laws and rulings. Or in other words, it's the study of Sharia Law. Here we hear about Sharia Law many times, but most people don't know what Sharia Law is. Sharia Law is just the Islamic laws and rulings pertaining everything. Everything in Islam which has a law, it's called Sharia Law. Many people, they think Sharia Law is just the penal code. It's every single law in Islam is called the Sharia Law. And it's basically what we're allowed to do, what we're supposed to do, and what we're prohibited from doing. And the ulama, they divide every single action, every single movement, every word that I say or do, everything we do and say, they divide this into 5 laws. There is no such action or word which cannot be described by one of these 5 laws. Either it is wajib, which is mandatory, or it is haram, which is prohibited, we're not allowed to do it, or it's mustahab, it's recommended, makruh, discouraged, unrecommended, or if none of the 4 applies, mubah. Mubah is, it's permissible for you to do it. So most of the laws in Islam are mubah, because most things that we do, they're not wajib, nor haram, nor mustahab, nor discouraged. I'm moving my hands right now. It has a law, but the law is mubah. Drinking water, in most cases, unless it's to save my life, it becomes wajib, or unless it's someone else's where I'm not allowed to drink from it, it becomes haram. But the natural, the original law of drinking water is mubah. You're allowed to do it. It's up to you, basically. So every single action and movement in Islam has a law. These collective laws, we study them in the ilm al-fiqh, in the study of fiqh. Every single thing that is wajib, haram, mustahab, makruh, the ulama study this in al-fiqh. And when you look at Islam, you notice that it's a very comprehensive religion when it comes to its jurisprudence, its laws. There are so many laws in Islam, and they govern every aspect of our life. You see, there are laws from the biggest things in life, like how to form a government, there's laws. To the smallest things, like your personal hygiene. There's many things that are haram, many things that are wajib, some things mustahab, and some things that are makruh, and also of course mubah. So even in our personal hygiene, Islam has given us laws and rulings, how to deal with it, how, marriage, raising children, of course the religious rituals, salah, siyam, hajj, many laws about that. Your diet, what do you eat? There's many laws about that. How to conduct business, your dress code. All of this is governed by laws in Islam. And that's why we say Islam is not just a religion where you go on Friday or this day or that day and you practice. It's a complete way of life. Throughout the day, from the second you wake up till the last second you're awake, there are so many laws, rituals, and rulings that you have to abide by. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in every single aspect of our life, He governed laws, and that's why we say it's a way of life. Now before I continue, there are usually two objections that you hear about fiqh, the study of all these laws. The first objection is those that critique the Islamic legal system, and they say that the Islamic legal system is too complicated, it's too convoluted, and too invasive. There's so much laws that we really don't need, and they limit our freedom. You feel like you're in prison, can't do anything. Some youth, they say everything is haram, everything has to have a law, too many obligations. We need less laws. The less we have, the better it will be. So this objection is, many people, they pose this objection. Why so many laws? When you look at the book of Ahkam, it's the book of the Islamic laws, it's at least 500 pages. All these laws that I have to deal with. So what's the answer to this? The answer, my friends, is that less laws doesn't always mean better for the human being. I mean, look here in the US, there's so many laws. There's so many laws, especially the civil laws, or thousands upon thousands, many of them we don't even know about. If you think less laws is better, go to the Middle East and some countries where they have no laws and see how wonderful life is there. So sometimes these laws are for our own good. We're the ones that benefit from them. So even though they are complicating, but the point of these laws isn't to complicate our lives. Without them, our lives would be more complicated. There would be chaos. So in order for us to live the best life that we can, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, look, this is what you have to abide by. Don't do this, do that, it's better for you to do this or that. So all these laws in general, collectively, they serve the benefits of the human being. They serve us, and they protect us, and they guide us, and they take us ultimately to perfection. So when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says something is haram, there's harm in it. That's why He wants me to stay away from it. It's not because He enjoys limiting my freedom. When He says something is wajib, that means there's something good in it for me. So if I go and I perform this thing, I'm the one that's going to benefit. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says this in the Holy Quran. In one verse, the Holy Quran says, الَّذِينَ يَتَّبِعُونَ الرَّسُولَ النَّبِيَّ الْأُمِّيِّ الَّذِي يَجِدُونَهُ مَكْتُوبًا عِنْدَهُمْ فِي التَّوْرَاةِ وَالْإِنْجِيلِ يأمرهم بالمعروف وينهاهم عن المنكر ويحل لهم الطيبات ويحرم عليهم الخبائث ويضع عنهم إصرهم والأغلال التي كانت عليهم. The Quran says that one of the main roles of the Holy Prophet was to enjoin the good, encourage people to do good, and forbid them of the evil. And then the Quran tells us what the good and the evil is. Anything that was good for them, He tells them to stay away from. Anything that was to do it. Anything that was harmful for the human being, He told them to stay away from. So when the Holy Prophet told his people, don't do this, this is haram, it's because there was evil in that thing. And if He told them to do something, because they directly benefited from whatever He was ordering them to do. And thus the verse continues, فَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا بِهِ وَعَزَّرُوهُ وَنَصَرُوهُ وَاتَّبَعُوا النُّورَ الَّذِي أُنزِلَ مَعَهُ أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ. The Quran says those individuals that followed Rasulullah and they implemented his teachings, أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْمُفْلِحُونَ, they are the successful ones. They are the ones that are going to benefit. It's just like a doctor. When he tells you eat this, eat that, don't do this, don't do that, he doesn't benefit from that. I'm the one that's benefiting. You want to go against the orders of the doctor? Fine. But then when you have health problems and you're not getting better, just blame yourself. So this is exactly how the Holy Prophet was when he told us all the wajibat and the muharramat. He's like a doctor. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala designed us. He knows what's good for us, what's bad for us. He wants us to stay away from what's harmful, and He wants us to do what's good. And that's why the Holy Prophet is narrated saying before he died in Hujjatul Wada, he said, everything that I know, that I was taught from Allah, that will help you either here in this world or in the next life, I taught you. I didn't leave anything out. I was as honest as I could be with you. Anything that could possibly help you either in this life or in the next life, I told you. And anything that will keep you back, that will harm you, I told you to refrain from. So basically be mindful of my teachings and take care of them and implement them, because at the end of the day, you are the ones that will benefit. So this is the first objection. There's many laws, and sometimes they are complicated and they're difficult to memorize and learn all of them, but if we do, we are the ones that will benefit. That's the first objection. Another objection that I sometimes see is that many people, you find them, faithful people, good practicing Muslims, is that with the laws of fiqh, with their ibadat, their rituals, sometimes they're too lenient. Or in other words, they're careless when it comes to the laws of the fiqh, of jurisprudence. For example, when he or she's doing wudu, they don't care if they do the right hand first or their left hand. Should they do it this way or that way? Should they wash their hand once or twice? Should they wipe or wash their feet? To them, who cares? Just do wudu and khalas. And they're very lenient, careless. They're not very precise when it comes to the laws of fiqh. Even when they're told, sometimes there's ignorance, they don't know. Even when you tell them, they don't care. It's they say, who cares? The difference isn't too much. Or in their salah, you find that their salah is not, they're not praying in the correct way. When they have doubt in the raka'at, when we have doubt between is it first raka'ah or second raka'ah, they don't really care. We have to be very precise in these, but they don't care. They're very lenient and careless. With, for example, najasa and tahara, the ahkam of najasa and tahara, you find many Muslims, practicing Muslims, they're careless. They don't know the laws, and even when you tell them, they still are a little careless. I remember once I read a book of this so-called Muslim reformer who was trying to reform Islam, and then one chapter it was all against fiqh. He says the scholars have complicated our lives with fiqh. I remember he mentioned this example. He said, let's say Maghrib is at 7 p.m. He says, come on, you're telling me that if I break my fast at 6:58 or 6:59, God is going to burn me in hell for 1 or 2 minutes? So you see, the point that I'm trying to make, it's that carelessness in his attitude. Now, who cares 1, 2 minutes? Obviously that same attitude with his flight, and he'll miss his flight. But with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we're so lenient and we don't care 1 minute, 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Unfortunately, sometimes the hijab, some sisters, they're not careful with the hijab and precise. Some hair shows, is God going to put me in hell because of 2, 3 pieces of hair? So it's that overall attitude that we're kind of careless when it comes to fiqh, and when we're told, we say, you know what, Allah is merciful, He's not going to care about these small details. Now, the problem with this attitude and with this objection is that sometimes even the small discrepancies will invalidate your ahkam, and it may invoke God's wrath. There is a hadith from Imam Ali where he says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hid 4 things in 4. And one of the things that he says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ أَخْفَى غَضَبَهُ فِي مَعْصِيَتِهِ. He says that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala hid His anger in all of the different ways we can disobey Him. So basically, if I commit 1 haram, 3, 4, it doesn't mean Allah is going to condemn me to hell. But what the hadith is saying, be careful, don't belittle any law. Just say, who cares about this law? God isn't going to, because it may be that specific law that will make or break your day on the Day of Judgment. So the Imam says, don't have that carelessness attitude, because it's that specific law where you find not important, but it's important to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So you're not the judge. When God gives an order, khalas, we obey all the laws in the same way. We can't say this one is more important than that one, or this one is less. They're all equal in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's number one. Number two, when you go to the ahadith of the Imams themselves, the Imams, they were first of all very, very precise, and they told us to be precise. So when we have this careless attitude where, who cares if I do wudu this way or that way, if I eat this or I don't eat that, or if this is najis or tahir, if I pour water once or twice. If I have this careless attitude, I'm going against the teachings of the Imam. The Imam spent so much time teaching the delicate differences and do this, don't do that, and then we throw all that away. All the the hard work of the Imams, we say it's not important. We're supposed to learn from the Imams. There are times when the Imam says you can be lenient in this mas'ala. Yeah, if you're a little off, it's okay. But there is other times when the Imams were strict. If you're 1 centimeter off, you have to redo your amal. If you're 1 minute off, if you pray 10 seconds before dhuhr time, Salatul Dhuhr, the Imams tell us, if you intentionally do that, your salah is batil. So many times we have to be careful in the masail of fiqh. Because in certain times, if you aren't doing it as the Imams did it, as the Quran says it, you have to redo all of that. This is the teaching of the Imams themselves. They were strict with many of the masail. So we can't have this careless attitude where, who cares, you know what, I pour water once or twice, if I do my right hand or left hand. And the only way for me to do it the right way, first I have to learn the masail of fiqh, which most people don't take the time to learn. And number two, I have to be very strict with them. I have to be careful with them. I know many faithful individuals who are very, very strict when it comes to fiqh. Sometimes you can't even tell the difference between the two questions he's asking because it's so delicate. But they want to go to that level of detail with the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They want to share that, they want to show Allah that I care about your laws. Even if it's a string, if it's that tiny, the difference, I want to stay away from it, or I want to do it. Even there's a 1% chance, I want to do it. This is obviously the spirit that Allah loves, that you show that, that love and that devotion, that commitment, just like some of us have with money. If it's about 1 cent more, I'm going to go and research it and make sure that I get it. So we have that, careful attitude and with money and personal things, but with laws, we're very lenient and we say, who cares? And I want to read you a hadith here, a beautiful hadith that's narrated from one of the companions of Imam Sadiq by the name of Ahmed ibn Isa. Now before I tell you this hadith, first you have to know who Ahmed is. Some of you may be taking the Rijal class that is offered in this hawza this year. And obviously one of the individuals that is always discussed in the science of men, science of Rijal, is Ahmed ibn Isa. Ahmed was one of the students, companions of Imam Sadiq and Imam Al-Kadhim, and I believe Imam Al-Rida, 3 Imams. Ahmed is considered one of the greatest narrators of all time. In fact, the ulama have a term called Ashabul Ijma'. If you take the class of Ilm al-Rijal, there will be, I'm sure, an in-depth analysis about this. Ashabul Ijma' are 18 members. They're the 18 greatest narrators of the Imams. Like one of them, Zurara. Some of you have heard about Muhammad ibn Muslim. And one of them is Ahmed ibn Isa. So you can basically understand from the ulama considering him amongst the greatest 18 that this person is way up there. He was very knowledgeable. He narrated over 1,000 hadiths from the Imams. He was a scholar. And he was very pious. The Imams used to praise him. There's a beautiful hadith that I saw. He goes and visits the Imam, the 7th Imam, Imam Al-Kadhim, and he asks the Imam to do a dua for him. Do dua that Allah, gives me good health, wealth, and my iman stays intact. And then he asks him to do dua for me to go to Hajj. And he used to always go to Hajj every year. So he says the Imam did the dua and he said, may Allah grant you Hajj 50 times. Now, if we say 50, it's an exaggeration. With the Imam, 50 means 50. So he says, I knew that 50, that means I won't be able to go 51 times. He used to go every single year. Because back then, just ride your camel, and he probably lived in Medina. So it's easy to go to Hajj. It's not difficult like now and so costly. So he went to Hajj 50 times. The 51st time, he also wanted to go to Hajj, but he wasn't sure if he'll make it because the Imam told him many years back that he'll only go 50 times. He went to Al-Juhfa, that's where the miqat, one of the places where we wear our ihram is. He went, he put on his ihram. As he was preparing to do the Hajj, go from Juhfa to Mecca to perform his Hajj, there was a flood. There was a flood that took him. He drowned in that flood and he died. And he was considered Ghariq al-Juhfa, the person who drowned in the flood of Al-Juhfa. So he died before he was able to go to Hajj 51 times. So not only was he a very, very devout and holy individual, went to Hajj 50 times, he was a scholar. So you would assume this person knows all the ahkam. But listen to this hadith, and it's sahih. عن حماد بن عيسى قال لي أبو عبد الله يوما. He says, I went to visit Imam al-Sadiq one day, and the sixth Imam told me, تحسن أن تصلي يا حماد? He asked me, Hamad, just out of the blue, do you know how to pray the perfect prayer? Imagine I ask one of you, and you would say, yes, because this person is a scholar. Now, obviously, this is in the beginning of his career. So, he became a big scholar after, during the time of Imam al-Kadhim and Rida. So, this is in the beginning. So, he told him, yes, I know how to pray. The Imam told him, can you get up and pray in front of me? He said, yes. And then he told the Imam, not only do I know how to pray, he told him, أحفظ كتاب حريز. There was a book by the name of Kitab Hariz. It was compiled by one of the companions of the 5th and 6th Imam by the name of Hariz. His name was Hariz. And in this book, he compiled all the ahadith about the laws of salah, the fiqh laws of salah. He compiled them in a book, and then he began to distribute it between the ashab so that they can learn the ahkam of salah. So it was so popular that he tells the Imam Hamad, I've memorized the book of Hariz, basically all the laws. It's like, I bring you the Risala Amaliyya, Minhaj al-Salihin of the Marja'. So I know all of it. So the Imam told him, get up and pray. He says, I got up and I prayed 2 rak'ahs. After I finished, he says, the Imam nodded his head. He told me, Ya Hamad, la tuhsan an tusalli. He told me, oh Hamad, you didn't pray the right way. And then he told him, ما أقبح بالرجل أن يأتي عليه 60 سنة أو 70 سنة فما يقيم صلاة واحدة بحدودها تامة. He says, how shameful is it that someone prays for 60 or 70 years and he thinks he's a holy person, but after that he realizes that his entire salah was wrong, it was incorrect, it was invalid. He wasn't praying the perfect salah. So Hamad is shocked. This is the Imam telling him, shame on you. Your salah is not even right, and you say, I know Kitab Hariz. Now, maybe this showed that he knew, he had the knowledge, because he says, I memorized Kitab Hariz, so he should know. But he was lenient in implementing them. Knowing something doesn't mean you're going to do it. I know the laws of salah, but sometimes I'm careless. I do it too fast, and because of how fast I do it, I'm not going to pray right. So then the Imam told him, sit down, I'll teach you how to pray the correct salah. He says the Imam got up, and in this hadith, Hamad, he mentions all the small details, all the trivial details of what the Imam did, his posture, his body, his hand movement, everything the Imam did. And the Imam was telling him, pray like this. Pay attention to your details, the details of your body when you pray. Or else sometimes your salah will be batil, it'll be invalid, you have to redo. Other times, it won't be batil, you don't have to redo it, but it's not going to get you anywhere. You're not going to even be rewarded for it. Because it's such a, a backward salah, or such a, weak salah where you have no concentration, you're not doing everything to the fullest that you should do. So he says, the Imam, فَقَامَ أَبُو عَبْدِ اللَّهِ مُسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ مُنْتَصِبًا. And there's 3-4 lines that Hamad is describing the posture of the Imam before he said Allahu Akbar. So maybe just 1 minute he was getting in the right posture, in the right, his hands, his feet, he was putting everything in the right, where it has to be, the right place. Only then he said Allahu Akbar. So the Imam, the point he's trying to teach Hamad, with your salah, be serious. Be serious, take some time to make sure the way you're standing, your posture is right. Don't just come say Allahu Akbar and quickly. And then Hamad, it's a very long hadith. Many of the ahkam of salah that we have, our ulama, they get it from this hadith of Hamad. The Imam was teaching Hamad the correct prayer. So he says, now some of them are mustahab, of course. They're not all wajib. You don't have to do all of these things. But this is how our salah should be. فَقَامَ أَبُو عَبْدِ اللَّهِ مُسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ مُنْتَصِبًا. Muntasiban, meaning he was standing like this. Some of us, we stand like this. Don't stand like, with your back, kind of, yeah. So he says, فَقَامَ أَبُو عَبْدِ اللَّهِ مُسْتَقْبِلَ الْقِبْلَةِ مُنْتَصِبًا فَأَرْسَلَ يَدَيْهِ جَمِيعًا عَلَى فُخْذَيْهِ. He put his hands on his thighs, like this. So these are my thighs, like this, when he's standing. And then he says, قَدْ ضَمَّ أَصَابِعَهُ. His fingers were attached close to each other, not like this. Put your hands on your thighs like this. وَقَرَّبَ بَيْنَ قَدَمَيْهِ حَتَّى كَانَ بَيْنَهُمَا قَدَرْ ثَلَاث أَصَابِعْ مُفَرَّجَاتٍ. Even the distance between your 2 feet when you're standing, the Imam says, pay attention even to that. So this is how precise the Imams were. And they would be angered when they would see their ashab. They're careless about this. And then some of us, we come and object, we say, pray anyway. No, this made the Imams angry. This upset them. The Imams want us to take our salah serious and implement all the laws. He says the distance between the 2 feet was 3 open fingers. So basically 10 centimeters. So some people, they open their feet widely. No, don't do that. Close them. They attach them. No. 3 open fingers. Now this is not all wajib. Now this class isn't the laws of the ahkam of salah. You can read the what's wajib when it comes to your salah, but this is of course the higher level salah that many of us are careless about. And then he says, وَاسْتَقْبَلَ الْقِبْلَ بِأَصَابِعْ رِجْلَيْهِ. Even his fingers of his feet were all pointing towards the qibla. So don't stand like this. Align them. وَقَالَ Allahu Akbar. After all of this, he said, Allahu Akbar. So this is before salah, and the Imam is, that precise. Can you imagine in salah how precise the Imam would be? And then he says he read Surah Al-Hamd, Qul Huwa Allah. He gives all the details. I don't want to mention all of it now. I don't have enough time. And then when you read this hadith, you see that when it comes to the ahkam of salah, not just salah, all the laws, all the siyam, fasting, hajj, there's hundreds of ahadith. The Imams told us this is the correct way of hajj. And many other things also, even our diet, the way we speak and what's halal and haram. The point I'm trying to make is the Imams were very precise, and they encouraged us to be precise and very mindful and careful of the laws of fiqh. And sometimes the laws are very similar. You have to read them and be precise and make sure that you differentiate between this and that. They're very close, but they're not the same thing. This is halal, the other one is not halal. I mean, imagine right now marriage. Basically, what is marriage in Islam? Marriage, you don't have to have a wedding. All you need is to say a few words, right? I want to marry a girl. She wants to marry me. She just says, زَوَّجْتُكَ نَفْسِي عَلَى الْمَهْرِ الْمَعْلُومِ. Just, there should be a dowry. It could be $1. And she says, زَوَّجْتُكَ نَفْسِي. I want to marry you. And I say, قَبِلْتُ. خلاص. These 3 words make us husband and wife. Without these 3 words, it's zina, it's fornication, adultery. So, it's very similar in the eyes of the public. It's just a word. We didn't go to any court. We didn't see any sheikh. We didn't, there is no wedding. There's nothing. There's just a few words. That's why the hadith, I think it's either of the Prophet or the Imam, where he says, إِنَّمَا يُحَلِّلِ الْكَلَامُ وَيُحَرَّمِ الْكَلَامُ. A few words will make something haram halal, and a few words will make something haram halal. But those words which are not important to me, I see them very trivial. In the eyes of Allah, they're important. So the point is, be very careful and be precise. Just like corporations, and lawyers, how precise they are in the wording of everything. This is how we all have to be with the laws and ahkam of fiqh. Now that we understand what fiqh is, the Islamic law system, the legal system, and we were able to refute these 2 objections, or we were able to address them. Now I'll speak about contemporary fiqh. What is contemporary fiqh, and how is it different than normal fiqh, the classical fiqh? Now I'm sure some of you here, some of you that are listening online have taken some of the normal fiqh classes, Islamic law classes, or will take it. So what's the difference? Why do we need this in addition to that? Now it's the same, it goes under the same branch. It's still fiqh, what's halal and haram. But the difference between this contemporary fiqh and the classical fiqh is the matters and issues that we discuss. So usually the issues that we discuss in this class aren't discussed in that class. Why? To understand, I'll have to explain in this way. You see, during the times of the Imams, there were many legal issues that did not apply to that time. But now they apply. During that time, no one asked about those issues. The Imams never addressed them because they didn't apply. And there's two examples. The first is the scientific advancements that happened in this century, For example, now we have cloning. If you open the books of Hadith, did anyone ask the Imams about cloning? Is it halal or haram? Did the Imams tell their companions cloning is halal? No, that didn't exist back then, right? For example, donating your organs. This is one of those areas of disagreement between the scholars. It's a fiqh issue. But you won't find anything explicit, like very clear in the hadith, because it didn't exist, it didn't apply back then. For example, using telescope to sight the moon. That didn't apply. So in the ahadith, these stuff usually didn't, you don't have anything in the ahadith or in the Quran about this that is explicit. So in your classical fiqh class, it's the masail that the Imam spoke about. It's the issues that the Quran and the Imam spoke about, and we discuss it. Contemporary fiqh is the matters and the issues that came after the Imams, that were never applied there, and we try to determine the law of these issues and matters that happened, that rose after the times of the Imams. So one reason why we need contemporary fiqh is because of the scientific and technological advances that have raised new masail, new issues, like I mentioned, cloning, donating organs, using the telescope to sight the moon, and so on and so forth. Another reason why we need contemporary fiqh and how it's different than the classical fiqh is because of the globalism that has happened now, and how we're all so connected throughout the world. And Muslims have, the migration of the Muslims that we see to places that Muslims had never reached before. Muslim communities now live everywhere in the world. And with this, new challenges have come up. New issues have come up that never applied during the times of the Imams. For example, if we have a Muslim community living in northern Sweden, northern Norway, there's places where there's 6 months of day or 6 months of night. How do they pray there? Now obviously Norway, Sweden existed during the times of the Imams, but no Muslim went to live there and thus came to ask the Imam. So that mas'ala, that issue never applied during the times of the Imams, correct? Now it applies. Now we have Muslim communities that live in places where they have extremely long nights or extremely long days. How do you fast in those areas? This mas'ala, you usually won't find it in the classical fiqh. Classical fiqh, they'll tell you about the laws of fasting in general. But what about in the places where they have a very long night or a very long day? How do we fast there? What is the law applicable to this issue? This we usually discuss it, the ulama discuss it in contemporary fiqh. They call it al-masail al-mustahdatha, the new masail that never existed, never applied before. Al-masail al-mutajaddida or al-mustahdatha. And another example for relying, when it comes to the moon sighting, relying on distant places. Back then Muslims lived in very concentrated places in the Middle East. Now they live all over the world. If the moon is spotted in China and Australia, can I rely on that or not? And this will be my first mas'ala, inshallah. This didn't apply before. Now, during this past few decades, because the Muslims are migrating to different places, and because of the globalism and how connected they are, especially with technology, now this is an issue that we have to address. So when we go to the ahadith, we don't find anything explicit about organ donation, about cloning, about using the telescope, about the places that have extremely long nights or days. There isn't anything explicit. What do? How do we derive the law of these masail? How do we overcome this predicament? That's why the ulama, they created this, they began discussing these masail in contemporary fiqh. Al-masail al-mustahdatha. And what we have to understand as a general point is that the Imams of Ahlul Bayt, in addition to the Quran, they gave us all the general tools that help us in deriving the laws of Islam. Even if they explicitly didn't tell us what the law of all these issues of cloning or donating organs, because they didn't apply back then, they didn't explicitly tell us the law of that, but they gave us the general tools and laws and rules that we can use them to derive those laws. We can extract those laws from their general teachings. There's a hadith about this. It's narrated from both Al-Imam Al-Sadiq and Al-Imam Al-Ridha. The two Imams say in this hadith, عَلَيْنَا إِلْقَاءُ الْأُصُولِ وَعَلَيْكُمُ التَّفْرِيعِ. They spoke to their companions and they told them, our job, the Imams, إِلْقَاءُ الْأُصُولِ. We teach you the basis, the general rules. That's our role. And your role is عَلَيْكُمُ التَّفْرِيعِ. Tafri' is, your job is to apply those general rules on the different situations that you have. You have to use our general laws and rules to derive and extract the different applications and examples. So it's kind of like, find X. The teacher in math tells you how to find X, but then he's not going to teach you in every example, right? He's just going to show you how to understand the law or the rule. So the Imams, they showed us how to find X, just as an example. But how do I apply that? You have to be smart and extract it and derive it from the teachings of the Imams. So the Imams did give us the general rules. And we can use those general rules to derive the laws of these contemporary issues. So in that respect, the Imams did their part. They gave us the necessary tools. Even if the mas'ala, the issue, was non-existent back then, we could still use their teachings, hence in their teachings, to find something that applies to now. And that's why when you see the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt, there's many ahadith that the Imams will tell you, every single issue that you could possibly think of, situation, you could find a verse or a hadith to use it. To use it in that situation. One hadith from Imam Al-Sadiq says, يقول ما من شيء إلا وفيه كتاب أو سنة. Everything, shay, every mas'ala you can possibly think of. What is the law of this mas'ala? Is this halal or not? How do I do this or not? There is kitab. There is a verse in the Quran that indirectly applies, or a hadith that indirectly. Directly, no. Cloning, there's nothing directly cloning because it didn't exist back then. But indirectly, the general, what is cloning? What's the idea of cloning? You could find something that's general that will indirectly apply, that will help you in deriving the law of cloning and donating your organs and using the telescope and so on and so forth. Another hadith, one of the companions of the Imams by the name of Suma'ah, he asks Al-Imam Al-Kadhim, the seventh Imam, قُلْتُ لَهُ أَكُلُّ شَيْءٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ نَبِيِّهِ أَوْ تَقُولُونَ فِيهِ. He says, is everything in the Quran and the ahadith of the Prophet? Or do you guys just make stuff up sometimes? When you have no hadith, just say your own opinion. The Imam says, بَلْ كُلُّ شَيْءٍ فِي كِتَابِ اللَّهِ وَسُنَّةِ نَبِيِّهِ. He says, everything is in the Quran and in the hadith, but it's not explicitly there. You have to dig deep to find it. You have to think sometimes. It's hidden somewhere in the Quran. It's a general idea that you can use to apply. So the Imams wouldn't give their opinions just like that. I think. There's no room for I think in fiqh. You have to go back to the Quran. If any of you is taking usul, legal theory, then you already learned that there's only 4 sources to derive laws from. The Quran, the hadith of the Prophet and the Imams, ijma', when there's a consensus of the ulama, and this is also an area of argument. And the 4th, aql, intellect, but this not just any intellect. There's lots of rules and limits and restrictions to intellect. But opinion is not one of them. And many people, they tell you, I think this is, I think. There's no room for I think. In the religion of Allah, there is no room for I think. We have to get it from God and the Imams of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. So, our ulama, when they come to address these new masail, any new scientific advancement where people ask them, what is the law of this? They have to search and do so much research in order to try to find something that in the end it does apply. Now, so inshallah, we will begin discussing these different masail. Each session, I'll try to, my sessions will be between 40 to 50 minutes, I think. Each session, I will try to cover an entire topic. Now, keep in mind that the ulama, when they discuss this in this class, one mas'ala, one issue, they could discuss it for 6 months. Just like the other fiqh issues. Obviously, I don't have that time, nor I think we're all ready for that type of in-depth analysis and study. But I'll try to keep it simple. I will present the different views on all of these different masail, and I'll give some reasoning that the ulama have used, some basic reasoning, so we can understand. If one alim says, donating organs is halal, What's his reasoning behind that? What are the arguments he relied on? If another one says it's haram, or there's limits, there's conditions, what are his arguments and reasoning? Because everything in fiqh has to have reasoning. If there's no reasoning, valid arguments, we can't accept it. Even if the marja said it. Now, I can't be the judge, a normal person. Another marja, another alim is the judge. But not just average individuals, they say this doesn't make sense to me. No, it has to be some qualified scholar who can make the judgment. So they always say this when we learn in the Hawza, the worth of your words are only as important as the arguments and the evidence that you bring. Even if it's someone like Sayyid al-Khu'i, who's a legend, in the Hawza, if he says something and he doesn't bring powerful proof, no one's going to accept it. So he only became a Sayyid al-Khu'i because of his strong arguments that he constantly would give. So when you hear Sayyid al-Khu'i says something, you usually accept it. I accept it. I'm not in the Hawza. In the Hawza, they don't accept anything unless it passes through the system, and they have to completely analyze it, make sure it's correct. But average people, when they hear Sayyid al-Khu'i said something, they know he did his research and he brought very powerful, strong proof to prove whatever he wanted. So the worth of my words are all dependent on the evidence and the argument that I have. My words, being my words, just me, Ahmed, they're useless. Even if I'm a marja. Unless I'm an imam. If I'm an imam, I'm a prophet, yes. Whatever the imam says, we can ask him, but we have no right to further question him if we're not convinced, because he's directly tied to God. This is what God wants. Take it or leave it. But me, I'm not directly tied to Allah. I'm not a messenger. There's no Jibreel that comes to me, an angel that tells me this is Allah. So when I say this is wajib, or this is halal, or this is haram, or I think we should pray this, I need proof. How do I know this is what God thinks? This is what God's view is. So inshallah, I will present the different masail. Now, obviously, this session, we did it here in this classroom, but I'm traveling very soon. So inshallah, in my subsequent sessions, we'll have it live. We can present it on the projector here through Skype. I can hear you, you can hear me. And so if there are any questions, we could, I'm more than happy to answer your questions. Now, I had prepared the first mas'ala, which is the moon sighting mas'ala. And I think this in particular will take more than one session. It'll take maybe 2 sessions, because there's a lot of information and things to mention about it. But I think I don't have time to begin. So in my next session, I will begin with our first mas'ala, and that is the moon sighting. What are the different opinions? And I want to remind you that I'm not trying to prove any one of the different opinions. I'm just trying to academically just present them and show that each view's evidence, and that's for the maraja to decide which one's right or wrong. So inshallah, next week we will begin with the issue of moon sighting and the different opinions about moon sighting. Thank you. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless us all, to increase our knowledge, and to help us in understanding the ahadith of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam, the verses of the Quran. I ask Him to increase our knowledge. I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us in continuing and following in the footsteps of Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Muhammadin wa alihi at-tahirin.